Okay, we are about to dive into one of the most brilliant and, honestly, one of the most complex arguments in the entire New Testament. It all comes from Hebrews chapter 7. See, the author had a huge problem to solve. How could Jesus be the ultimate high priest if he wasn't even from the priestly family line? So let's crack this thing open.
Right, so the author of Hebrews is facing this major theological puzzle. It's a real head-scratcher that, at first glance, seems to fly in the face of a core belief. Let's really look at the question at the heart of it all.
And there it is. That's the core issue. I mean, the Old Testament law was absolutely clear. Priests, they had to come from the tribe of Levi. Period. No exceptions. But everyone knew Jesus was from the tribe of Judah. That's the line of kings, not priests. So how on earth could he be the high priest? It really seems like an impossible contradiction.
To solve this puzzle, the author does something brilliant. They reach way back into the Jewish scriptures and pull out this super mysterious figure. He only shows up for a moment in Genesis, but he holds the key to the entire argument. His name is Melchizedek.
This is our guy. He's not a Levi, but the Bible itself calls him a priest of God Most High. And here's the crucial part. He meets with Abraham, the great patriarch himself. This one ancient encounter is the very foundation on which the author of Hebrews is going to build their entire case.
Now here's where the argument gets really clever. The author focuses on what the Old Testament doesn't say about Melchizedek. Just look at these details. No parents mentioned, no family tree, no record of his birth or his death. Now, for the author, this silence isn't just missing information, it is the information.
And this so-called argument from silence becomes the basis for establishing a completely different, and as we're going to see, a far superior order of priesthood, one that plays by a totally different set of rules.
So just think about what that implies. If Melchizedek's priesthood isn't based on who his dad was, and it has no recorded end, what does that mean? It means his authority must come directly from God, creating this eternal priesthood that's completely separate from the whole Levitical system.
And this slide just lays it all out, side by side. On the one hand, you have the Levitical priesthood. It's based on your family line, right? A chain of mortal men that's always broken by death. But on the other hand, you have the Melchizedekian order. It's established by a divine oath, and it's held by one eternal priest. It's not just different, it's permanent.
Now, the mystery of Melchizedek didn't stop there. He was such a fascinating figure that later Jewish traditions developed this incredible theory about who he really was.
You heard that right. Some ancient Jewish interpreters, writing in commentary texts we call targums, actually proposed that this mysterious priest-king was Shem, yep, Noah's son, who survived the Great Flood. It sounds pretty wild, but their reasoning was based on one key thing.
The whole basis for this theory comes down to biblical chronology. I mean, if you actually map out these super long lifespans given in Genesis, Shem was still alive when Abraham was born, and he lived well into Abraham's life. They were literally contemporaries, which makes it chronologically possible for them to have met.
So why haven't come up with this theory? Well, it did a couple of things. First, it kind of solved an awkward problem. Why is Abraham, the father of the faithful, paying homage to some random local Canaanite king? Well, if that king is actually his revered ancestor Shem, it's a sign of respect, not submission. And later on, this idea was actually used in theological debates to argue that this priesthood was taken from Melchizedek and given to Abraham, which was a direct challenge to the Christian claim that it passed to Jesus.
Okay, so now we get to the most mind-bending part of the argument in Hebrews 7. The author makes a claim that just challenges our whole modern understanding of time, biology, and, well, existence itself. Just let that sink in for a second. The author is saying that Levi, Abraham's great-grandson, who wouldn't be born for generations, personally paid a tithe to Melchizedek. How? Because he was in the loins of Abraham at the time. This is really the knockout punch of the entire argument.
So how do we make sense of this? Well, our modern minds, we immediately jump to a figurative meaning, right? Something scholars call corporate solidarity. The idea is that Abraham, as the head of the family, acts for everyone who comes after him. But what if the author meant it literally? What if, in their worldview, Levi was actually present in some real metaphysical way inside his great-grandfather?
And that's the question we have to ask if we want to take the text seriously. We instinctively think, existence requires a physical body. But was that how the author saw it? The whole idea of a premortal existence was actually debated in early Jewish and Christian thought.
And this wasn't some fringe idea. Think about when God tells the prophet Jeremiah, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." That suggests a personal identity that exists before conception. In that kind of worldview, the claim about Levi isn't just a metaphor, it's a statement about metaphysical reality. So after all this intricate web of logic and mystery, where does it finally lead us? What's the bottom line? What the author of Hebrews does here is just masterful. They weave together scripture, logic, and these deep philosophical concepts to build their case. By connecting Jesus to Melchizedek's eternal priesthood, and even arguing that Levi himself acknowledged it from within Abraham's loins, they prove that Jesus' authority wasn't a violation of the old system. No, it was the fulfillment of a much older, much greater, and totally eternal one.
And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final question. When we read ancient texts, it's so easy to dismiss strange ideas like Levi being in the loins of Abraham as just bizarre metaphors. But what happens when we really try to step inside the author's worldview? It challenges us to see that their arguments, while they feel strange to us, operate on a complex and coherent logic of their own. And it forces us to ask, how much of our own understanding is shaped by our hidden assumptions about how reality works?